a lack of contentment is part of that. I never know, like, enough. I don't know that word.
Today I'm joined by Ryan Penley. Ryan is a speaker, author, and host of the Next Fix podcast, where he explores recovery, reinvention, and the courage it takes to rebuild a life with purpose. After overcoming addiction and rebuilding from rock bottom, Ryan now uses his voice to help others reclaim clarity, identity, and forward momentum. He is the author of Man Up, Sober Up, and the founder of My Rock Bottom Recovery, a platform dedicated to honest conversations about sobriety, growth, and second chances. Great to see you, Ryan. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, man, you left off that I'm your friend, man. We go way back.
Through that. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah, man.
The book journey.
Yeah, man. I've enjoyed our conversations. So, yeah, man. But I'm living good, man. Things are well, as I had mentioned, before we hit record. And so the latest adventure is fatherhood. So it's been a blessing, man. I never would have, if you had asked me, because I'll be 7 years sober this month. And if you had asked me 5 years ago, oh, hey, what about a family? What about a kid? I'm like, do you know what I've done? I would have said, no, man, that's not me. Yeah, it's not in the cards. And here I am. So.
Isn't it awesome, though, that the world just opens up, man, when we get our head out of our posteriors? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's true, man. Clarity stacks up on top of clarity. And then you're just but see, that what comes to that is the gift, if you want to call it that, or the realization of how far up your head was, right? Like, getting that contrast is like,
Yeah. And the thing that I like to impart, because I was a youngster when I got sober, but it was like my soul was on a cheese grater,
That's pretty.
But that's what it felt like, that horrible inside, man. And then, like you said, the contrast, because now, waking up in the morning with a smile on my face, all that stuff, and enjoying life and loving it. And you've got a son turning 2 this month and 7 years, sober this month. Congratulations on both.
I appreciate it.
It's miracles, man.
That's the truth, brother. It's the truth.
So the way I like to begin and just start the conversation, if you wouldn't mind, the question, tell me about an event or a time in your life that caused you to show up for your life in a different way.
Yeah, in a different way. Well, I've got a rather recent development. My father, since being a new father and just fatherhood in general has been a rather big topic. My father in heaven, my faith, me being a father, and then most recently, my own dad. So I don't know him, and he is now sober. I think it's like 13 years, and he had me when he was my mom was 17, he was 18, and so I just didn't know him, and I, didn't acknowledge trauma. I'm not that guy. I'm kind of a forward thinker, or, I'm future oriented. I'm much more concerned about what comes next. I just have never been that guy to really desire going back into the trenches. I'm sure there's issues. I get it. I'm not trying to argue that. I just, when it comes to time and energy, I kind of just put it towards moving forward. And so recently I reached out to him, and it had been a few years when I was trying to get my feet under me, and I was just grasping at straws, trying to get sober. I did reach out at that time, And he had responded. It didn't amount to much. And again, kind of going back to what we were talking about, clarity, I didn't have much at the time. But now things are a little bit different. So this past December, I reached out. And so the question was, what is an event or circumstance that I had to show up differently? And so I was so concerned about whether or not he fits into my life, and who can he be for my son, and what can he do for my wife, and do I need him? Is this important? And I reached out and I started a conversation, and I realized quite quickly it wasn't about me. I realized it was for him. And it just, the whole conversation turned into this outrageous gift that I was able to give him by just calling him. And then I realized, I was being selfish, and I was so concerned and thinking about me and all of not just me, my family here, but I was so overwhelmed with how much good I was able to do for another human who happens to be my dad. But to participate in that gift it was a blessing, man. It was crazy. And so, he's kind of a loner type of guy. And I have some characteristics like that. But in that conversation, I just knew I realized so quickly, I'm like, this isn't about me at all. I was called to reach out because he really needed somebody to reach out, and he needed me to reach out. So, that's the most recent circumstance or event where I found myself like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. And and that's cool. Like, it wasn't like I was kicking. I was like, oh my gosh, it's just so clear to me. I can really help. And it didn't take a whole lot other than just having the courage to do it. And so.
That's really cool. That I was going to say the showing up part, I think, lots of pieces in there, but just having the courage to make that call, right? Like, that was huge. And another thing that I think is really cool, there's two other things, but one is the open-mindedness to approach it and allow yourself to have it happen in a way different than what you thought might happen. That's a really, really cool thing. Actually, how do you, I just, that feeling for you had to be just the best thing ever.
Yeah, it was rather, it was awesome, man. It was rad. I was like, wow. However, on the other end, in his response and his, the impact it was all having for him. And he told me, he said it was on a weekend, right? So Friday night, he had just gone through some surgeries on his knees, and he didn't have anybody to come and help him. And he doesn't really have any friends. And he was just kind of sitting there post-surgical, experience, can't really get up and down off of the toilet, kind of stuck in the house. And so he's just sitting there with his thoughts. And he started going over just kind of how lonely he was. And he told me this. And he realized that he is 100% lonely. And so here I reach out that Friday. He gets back to me on Saturday. We have a conversation, and he tells me, he's like, I went from Friday not having a single soul to come and care at all. He said all his mom and basically the Penley family, that side of the tree, I guess, there's not much left. And so he just told me I went from having nothing to a daughter-in-law, my son, and a grandson. It was a big deal, man. Like, I could tell, like, it was for him, it was everything. And for me, I was so concerned about the inconvenience and what, I just, my head was in the wrong place. And so I thank you for noticing that. Yeah, I just was able to kind of say, all right, this isn't about me. This is not what this is. In those moments when we are able to show up in service and really like give to a person something valuable, then it's just it's a it's a really important experience that I think we have the ability to focus on, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that you mentioned, which ties in with this whole thing, is having your face in the windshield as opposed to in the rearview mirror, which I'm a monumental fan of because it's very easy to blame the past for where we are and what we're doing and how we feel and all this stuff like, oh, I can't because and I don't mean anything disparaging to
Right.
anybody who's working on themselves and that sort of thing, but it's not all about the trauma and the inner child and all that sort of stuff. It's about and I have to respect that things have happened to everybody, and everybody has that past and some sort of trauma and some sort of thing that might want to tether them back to the past. But I am also a huge fan of living my life in the windshield and having faith that those things that I need to jettison or dispel or take out to the garbage or whatever are going to come up. And I've had that happen 1,000 times since I've been in recovery. When the feelings are overwhelming and the stuff from the past just bubbles up and out. And to me, that happens very naturally as a consequence of trying and moving forward. And that's a really cool thing. So I'm happy that you said that, Ryan, and that living the life in the windshield thing, man, it's just so crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been confronted by people, you know, about handling it, meaning I've been challenged to go into my past. And it's like hard for me to really see the payout. It's not hard for me to do, or I guess recognize. I'll go through it with anybody. I'll say it's no secret. My parents were addicts. My one parent still is an addict, right? It's awful. And sometimes it seems like I'm taking it lightly, or maybe I'm not giving it enough weight. However, I don't want to spend too much time there. There's people that need me. They need my energy. They need my time. And so when I do that math, right? When I do that math, it's like, do I go and try to fix something that I know was awful about my past, or I reach out to somebody who is there for me, and they may need me. So I almost always just kind of move forward and try to do something active or proactive, or just move the needle in the right direction for a reason other than my own sunk cost, right? Because I look at it like that too. It's like I there's not much I can do to change. So what is the point? Am I just identifying it? Because a lot of it is quite awful. I'm not even arguing that. But then what do you? I truly don't know. Like, am I just supposed to talk about it? I get. Maybe it's for a lack of trying. Maybe there's more to it, and I just don't know. But hey, I just don't see a whole lot of value. I'm going to be like, okay, well, I can go out and call and help somebody right now. So I just would rather just go do that instead of just, maybe sit around crying about my spilt milk.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I know that, for some people that's valuable to dip their toe in the past and to look in the rearview mirror. I look at the rearview mirror as just like driving. It's orientation and calibration, and when I look back there, I get oriented, I calibrate a little bit, and then I got to move forward. And, I think there is some value, but I've had so many things come up that I could not ever plan. I could not have ever said, oh, I want this to happen. It's amazing how I believe, just like our body heals itself, I believe our hearts and our souls also heal themselves if we're continuing to do the right things and we're open to healing and we're not, stuffing it down with the drugs or the alcohol or the food or the gambling or whatever the hell it is, right? Like that's the key to healing, is not continuing to make myself more sick. And then I can heal. It's like if I'm picking at a scab for 100 years, I'm going to be bleeding out for 100 years. If I stop messing with it, it's going to heal.
Right.
And I think there's value there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm on the same page you are, brother. Like there's some people that it helps them. It does them justice to get it out. And maybe and that's, we're all different. So that path, and even in recovery, it's unique for whoever it is. I know that, AA and steps and stuff is like a big part of your journey, and for myself, not so much. It just didn't happen to be that for me. And it's not that it's not incredibly valuable. I never argued that, not for a second. In fact, my father is actually, he's in A, and he just started doing Children of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like a different kind of thing. He's all about it, brother. He goes every day. And it is a big deal. And he attributes a lot of his success to that. And that's great. And I will say this, that conversation that he and I had, there was zero, bullshit. Like we didn't cast stones. He didn't get too overwhelmed that he wasn't there. We just didn't do that. And so it leads me to believe that he's also future oriented, right? Because, we could have been sitting there for days talking about X, Y, and Z and how it could have been different. And we just chose not to, we just said, okay, let's line up the next 10 years better than the last 10 and see if we can do something about it that way. Right. That was kind of how that conversation went down.
There's so much value in that. I think that's great. And I'm really happy for you, Ryan, that has worked out the way that it has, to this point. I think it's really cool for you. It's really cool for him. It's all part of the healing, right? For both of you and for your wife and your son. And, that's big stuff. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, man.
So what are some ways in recovery that you have, and this is for our listeners and people who might be struggling and, with anything in life, and it doesn't have to be recovery, it can be life, recovery is life at some point, and that's all it is. It's not, because it's not about the drugs and alcohol anymore, it's about life. So what are some of the ways that you've learned to show up for yourself over your 7 years of sobriety?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things here. One, if you're willing to admit everything counts, and I mean everything counts, if you subscribe to that, and when you do, it implies that the small things count, and so you don't overlook those smaller efforts, and you don't underestimate yourself when that's all you can do in whatever it may be that you're pursuing. Recovery is an easy one, right? In my recovery journey, a very hard to overcome goal was don't drink out of that bottle for 15 minutes. And that may blow some people's minds. And I failed. I failed a lot at that 15-minute window. It's wild, and it'd be like I'd last 12 and I'd be, I'd have a mouthful of vodka. Right. So, but that doesn't just apply to recovery. It applies to everything else. So if all you're able to do is 2 push-ups, don't underestimate that, because what you will quickly find out, when I say quickly, maybe that's not the right word, because there is a certain amount of time, before you start to see those compounding benefits. And so whatever the goal may be, but maybe we'll just use push-ups, right? It's like you have an intention, right? And right after the intention comes a disruption. We'll call it push-ups. You say you're going to do 10 push-ups and you've not done any for years. And this is a challenge. You're going to do 10 and you get to 8 the first day. The next day, right, you have the same intention, 10 push-ups, and then you only managed to get to 7 because you're fatigued from the yesterday's effort. And so you still have the same intention. And now it's you're on the 3rd day and you're sore as hell and you don't know what happened. You have this intention and you started, it's becoming more difficult. And you start to ask, like, is this exercise thing, is this a scam? like I got this all wrong. I'm headed in the wrong direction, but you're not. Here is what I'm trying to say is that every good intention right after comes disruption. And so that initial effort, yes, right? You get blasted with a hard challenge, right? Things come up fast and those they come to take you and take your wind right out of your sails and stop you. And so the lesson is if you could just get past that, you can just get past that and not underestimate your efforts. And then all of a sudden, there is a time, whenever that time may be, and it's depending on the goal, wherever it is, and if we're still talking about push-ups, maybe it's a week later. Some people, maybe it's 2 weeks later. Nobody knows that. But eventually, I can promise you this, you will do 10, and it'll be so damn easy, you won't stop. And then you'll be able to do 20, and then you'll be able to do 30. And so there's this tricky navigation to all of it. And this is really good, or at least really good for myself and what I've applied, is that I understand that with any good intention or any kind of decision, I'm going to go do something. I know I'm about to get hit in the jaw. I'm about to get hit in the face with something. And so then at least if I understand that, I'm braced a little bit. I'm like, all right, it's coming. Where is it coming from? Boom, I get hit in the face. All right. Now I know the trick. I know the score. I know the drill. I'm gonna just keep doing it any damn way. And then I know that at some point that day will come where it will turn. The tides will turn, and then it won't be as hard, and I'll be able to do a hell of a lot more of it, and I'll be able to withstand it, and you get stronger, and that's it. So yeah, I believe I had a second one in there somewhere, but anyways, that was that's about it.
No, that one that you just mentioned is great because it's so true, and it brought up a couple things for me. One is that everything is a muscle, and focus is a muscle, gratitude's a muscle, faith is a muscle, muscles are muscle, right? Like everything is a muscle, and everything needs to be built. And I think, we live in a society, and I'm a little older, but I remember, long ago, it was like, no pain, no gain. And, like all this stuff, which brings me to another point, which is don't be too hard on yourself, but also don't be too easy on yourself. You got to find that place where you're working hard at things, and you're developing and you're understanding that it does take time, and it really, but you also have to give yourself some grace. You have to give yourself time to relax, time to recover, just like the push-up thing. I mean, I think it's absolutely crucial I'm very capable of kicking the shit out of myself. And I've done a lot of that. And it's funny, I'll just tell you this little story about push-ups, because I had a shoulder reconstruction, 25 years ago. And it was just, everything was beat to crap. The surgeon's like, it's the worst shoulder I've ever seen without like a traumatic injury. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. And so they fixed it, but then it just kind of fell apart again. And I've been working on it literally since that time, and looking for new ways to help it, and therapies and different stuff. And I'm like, and just last week I was able to start doing push-ups again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is really cool because it's been a long, long time,
It's been a long time.
a
Yeah.
long time. But the thing is, you just can't give up. That's the
Right.
only time that failure becomes real is when you stop trying.
Yeah.
And I know you found that to be true in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not that easy. It's not that clear cut. And for every time you hear a conversation like this where it's like keep going, well, it doesn't always make sense for everything. It really doesn't.
Right. Right.
Like and there's nobody that can tell you but you. There's nobody that can tell you but yourself, right? What like if you give something a shot, what is the price that you're paying? And be realistic about it. And then what is the payout that you'll be getting? And be realistic about that too. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. And so, it is not always charged forward, no matter what. Like that wouldn't be very wise all the time. And so, yeah, it's tough out here, right? Everybody's trying to navigate these things and get better. And, like save your shoulder was like, the doctor's like, hey, if you keep this up, you're not going to be able to move your fingers. And then what do you do? Well, now the price that you may have to pay is that you can't move your hand. So now that's a whole other, it's like you want to do push-ups. It's something it's important to you, but okay, now something different happened, right? So you take that feedback, you're like, well, I don't want to go without using my hand. That seems like a high price. And so no matter what somebody might be pursuing, it's really your own responsibility. So then how do you combat that? Clarity, right? Clarity. And one thing you can't afford is having a diluted vision of what you're seeing. And that's going back to like drugs and alcohol. That's really, a big way that it chops people down to the knees. It's because you just can't see things clear enough to know when to push forward or when to bail or whatever it might be, because you're just not, you're too blurred,
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said, and something I've worked hard on in my life is just being able to find some quiet and find some peace of mind and slow down a little. And, because that's where the clarity comes. The clarity comes when things are quiet in here and in here. And then life starts to resonate as opposed to looking outside for all the answers come from in here. And
Right.
and that's a pretty cool place to find ourselves over time, because in general, I would say that, this is rarely wrong.
Right.
What happens in here, what goes on in here sometimes can be wrong because I'll get excited or I'll get like scared or I'll get whatever. But when it's coming from here, it's usually right on the money. And that's it can tell me to keep going. It can tell me to slow down. It can tell me, you know what, this may not be the right thing. Maybe you need to shift gears. Maybe you need to do something different. And it's really cool to be able to rely on that place of peace to be able to make some of those decisions.
Yeah, brother.
So what has changed for you in terms of your definition of a successful life over time? How has that changed?
Well, in my early years, just kind of like a Neanderthal. I really was. I was like walking around, I was like a talking monkey, like I was like, I thought happiness was where it was at, I thought like that was, how happy am I? And that pursuit is so hollow. There's no way to most certainly just ruin your life other than to pursue happiness as your number one goal. There's no other way to just destroy everything you got. And I did it. And we were so steadfast in that pursuit, me and my buddies. It was like we would say to each other, "Where's your happy meter?" And we would be snowboarding and we'd be traveling and we're doing drugs and there's girls and we had money. And it was like, oh, we have all these things, but we're always asking each other, "Oh, where's your happy meter?" And so we knew, all right, well, if my happy meter's low, I just know I have to do more cocaine. That's what I have to do. Duh. That's how I'll do it. And then, yeah, the happy meter kind of goes up a little bit, and then the cocaine's gone, and you got to get more cocaine, right? So that's and it's a hamster wheel, right, with a pursuit that ends nowhere. And so, that success for me was this happiness, this ever fleeting, never filled cup. And so I did that for, I would still say, the majority of my life. And then once I started getting some traction in recovery, I really started getting some clarity. I started finding other things, other things that had a better reward. And then not only that, but the reward was a little bit more sticky. It didn't just vanish in 10 minutes. And so I started moving toward virtuous things, and so what is that? People count on me, people call me, people know that I'll be there. And so it's a different thing, man. And so, I intend to be that person for my son. And so it changed everything. And so there's so much of my life was focused on happiness, and I just didn't quite get it for too long. And so now those it's not happiness, it's things that I know matter more, right? It's not that happiness doesn't matter, because it's still relevant. And if you get the gift of happiness in your life, cherish it and express gratitude, because that's how you can turn a little bit of happiness into more. What you don't always get a choice in is how long it lasts, so express gratitude for it and keep moving. And so, yeah, I started looking towards more virtuous options for where I gain what I consider valuable in my life.
Yeah, I love hearing that, and I love hearing about gratitude, Ryan, because that is the cornerstone of my life. And I don't, happiness to me is very fleeting. It's very like all of a sudden it's gone. It's one of those "this too shall pass" things, right? Like the bad times pass, but the good times also pass.
Yeah.
And the shit hits the fan, and then it doesn't hit the fan, and everything's cool for a while, and then something crazy happens. And that's just life. And so it sounds like, and I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but it sounds like, contentment and fulfillment are what has replaced the quest for happiness, but the contentment and fulfillment are found in being trusted and being loved and loving and giving, and those things that are actually the foundation of a wonderful existence, right? I mean, I will
say this though. Contentment, man, I still struggle. I'm never content. And I believe maybe it's because I'm an addict to my bones. And so a lack of contentment is part of that. I never know, like, enough. I don't know that word. And there's all kinds of unhealthy parts of that. I understand. Like, I'm well aware that that's an issue. So what I have taken as as a consolation prize is that I can turn that addiction characteristic into something valuable for others. And so I am rarely content. I'm always trying to get to some other level, but at least now I'm not destroying myself, and I'm not doing something as selfish as just putting it down my mouth or in my nose. So I still lack the content, and I still struggle with fulfillment. However, things are a lot better because I'm doing certain stuff. I'm focused on maybe somebody else being fulfilled, and that's important. It's a hell of a lot better than where I was. So, right.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, I don't know when the last time we talked. It had to be over a year ago, probably.
Yeah, I would say something like that. It's been a while.
Yeah, somewhere in that
Yeah.
neighborhood. But I'm feeling a different level of, ease, and I'd call it, what I'm feeling from you is just, you're settling in, and that's a pretty cool thing to see. Yeah,
Man.
I'm
I appreciate that, brother. That means a lot.
yeah, it's absolutely true. And it's, as soon as we got on, I was like, wow, there's a different feel and a different air, which is really cool.
Yeah, man. Well, thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
happy.
I it's good to be reminded. So
Yeah, because I mean, life is crazy, man, and as much as I love to support people, and people look at me to support them and make things happen, and and it's great to have people in my life too that are willing to do that with me, and not with me asking for it, but just having that reciprocal sort of relationship. And
yeah,
and letting people know, like when I see that in you and feel that from you, I'm like, I just got to say something, because it's very real, and
yeah. Well, thanks,
very,
brother.
very cool. So Ryan, where do we find you as we wrap up? How do we find your podcast and your efforts there to help folks out?
Yeah. Well, the podcast is The Next Fix. So I'm on YouTube. And so, yeah, if you just throw a Google with my name, Ryan Penley, you'll find ryanpenley.org, ryanpenley.org. You throw it, you ask Chat GPT. It'll tell you where I'm at. But yeah, I'm on The Next Fix is the podcast. The website is ryanpenley.org. Facebook is My Rock Bottom Recovery. So, yeah, man, I'm out there.
Cool, brother. I see your posts all the time. Yeah, and I love them. A lot of the quotes and stuff that you've been doing lately are really, really cool. So
Thanks, man.
definitely digging it.
Thank you, brother.
All right, Ryan, great to see you, man. And
Yeah.
thanks again for coming on. And I'm happy for, congratulations on your 7 years and your son, birthday. Very great stuff going on. So
Yes,
thanks,
sir.
man. Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you having me on. We'll do it again. That's for sure.
For sure. Sounds good.
Thank you for joining us on the Show Up podcast. To learn more about me, my coaching, or my books, please feel free to visit my website, DarylDittmer.com. DarylDittmer.com. Thank you.